Hey, we're back again with. I'm finally back again with a review for Secrets of the Lamp, the Academ setting. And I decided not to do the Land of Fate book that was with it, that doesn't actually belong there, because I believe that would alter the review a little bit. And since it's actually not in the box set, I don't think it should be reviewed at the same time. But maybe another day I'll review it alone, or I'll review the actual box set if I ever buy it. But let's get started. Genie Lore, the book that actually came with it, it's really well done. And however, it's one of those add-ons that you cannot get away with just using it. You had to have the core book. Now I think the Arabian Adventures book can act as a core part for it. I don't know though. I've never actually run an Alcadem, unfortunately, because I can never get players that really want to do that. But I mean, this covers a whole bunch of the genie stuff. I mean, it goes over the 4 types: Dao, Jinn, Efreet, and Marid, and then the 5th, which is actually Jan, which isn't tied to any element. And it really goes into detail about how genies interact. War, the leaders of each genie type, I guess. It goes into a lot of detail on them. It goes into detail on where they're stationed, like the Dao are in the Great Dismal Delve, which is in the elemental plane of Earth, and it goes a lot into that. And then it goes into how their military is built. And most of them, it also goes into like a different unit types. No, not unit types, but like, different units, like battle groups. Let me see if I can find one. Here's one. The Dream Brigade for, I believe it's the Dao? Yeah. The Great Dream Brigade. The Dream Brigade of the Dao consists of 4,000 fanatical Sandmen kept on hand to put down slave revolts and as cannon fodder to blunt attacks by other elemental creatures. The Dao reward their loyalty poorly. And it's got a couple of different types like that. I mean, we've got the Shadow Eye, the Triple Legion, the Pick and Shovel Corps, the Sixfold Symmetry, the Horns of Earth. I mean, it really goes into it across all of the genie types. Then it goes into their capitals and where their leader is and the different names of their leaders. Like the Efreet are the Sultans, whereas the Dao are Khan, which is really interesting. But some of them I feel didn't get as much focus as I believe they should have, so I'm just plugging in my laptop. I believe the Marid barely got it. They didn't get nearly as much as the others. Now that could be because you don't ever use the Marid, or they're weak. I don't know, but I noticed that they have a smaller section than the others. But aside from that, I mean, it's all really well done. Then we move on to how the genies interact. Skip one. The John, it goes into a good bit of the John, which, I mean, there's not much you can really do for a sect that's neutral to everything. They just kind of are there. But I think they did a pretty good job with going over that. And then they go into how the genies interact with the actual people of Zakara, and where they appear, what happens when they show up. Like, if the Great Khan of the Dao comes into the prime material plane, he initiates a massive earthquake that tends to destroy and level cities. So it goes a lot into that. And then there's actually 2 tribes of the John, and their leader, Jan, is Jann, so however you want to pronounce that. It goes into the 2 tribes, their leaders, and how they interact. It goes into the genie courts and how they work on the inside. It also goes into detail of how you were to address a genie if you're immortal. Not immortal, amortal. And it tells you how they kind of react. Like, here's one of my favorites. If you command a genie who dislikes you, it is... Oh, where is it? As you command, O dung heap of a mortal. That's one step before the point where it just wants to kill you. So, I mean, I find that amusing how they really go into it. It also goes into the different types of titles that leaders will have and how you're supposed to address them. To the Efreet, you're supposed to. Their title is the Fiery and All-Consuming Resplendence. That's how you're supposed to address them. So I thought it was very interesting how they go into that. And they go into. They list a few genie stories. The Tale of the Oathbinder, the Tale of the Battle of the Pit. I mean, the stories really are just side. I mean, they're no more than a paragraph each, but they're interesting to read. Then it goes into how genies truly interact with the mortals and what happens when they woo mortals. Yes, there is a section for it. It goes into how they interact with other things like the Yakmen, which I believe are specific to Al-Qadam, and which is pretty interesting. It goes into how they interact with giants. Apparently they despise giants, so they get along great probably with dwarves. Then it goes into the gulls. I don't know what those are, or the Markeen. The gulls, actually, I think they're like ghouls. I think, but I'm not quite sure. It goes into tasked genies, which are genies who were, an Efreet or a Dao or a Jinn or a Murid or I think even a John, and they are so focused on their task that they actually alter their form to be better at that task. Now they're then stuck in that form until a Shair, which is a special mage type in Al-Qadam, or a more powerful genie tries and dispels what's happened to it, which is pretty interesting. Then it goes into how to make them and the different types, how to free bound genies. Then it goes into genie magic, and it goes into how genie sorcerers work, how they summon mortals, the powers that genies have. It goes a little bit into the Shair again on how they interact with genies, because essentially a Shair, I believe they just pull their magic out of the is genie powers, but so it's pretty cool. They actually made a complete Shair's handbook, which I want to get my hands on. It's like done with different artwork and everything. It's pretty cool. Then it goes into some spells. I mean, these spells I personally don't think are all that useful, but I guess in the actually I didn't notice that one. Summon fire dragons. Oh shit, never mind. Despite its name, the spell does not summon any sort of creature. That's misleading as anything. Instead, it enables the caster to create 1 to 10 fiery tongues of snaking flame called fire dragons. Yeah, so apparently everyone, when they read that, thought the same thing, because that's the first sentence, is despite its name, the spell does not summon any sort of creature. Disappointing. And then it just goes into how to make magic items and the success and failures of it all. So, I mean, and just new magical items. I thought it was really well done, but I believe that if you're going to ever use it, you really, really need a core product. Now, we move on to the adventures. Now, I like these adventures. The first one, there's 3. The 3 are called Hazim the Fool. The second one is By the Numbers, and the third one is In the City of Brass. Now, I really, really enjoyed reading these adventures. I thought Hazim the Fool was just a great adventure. It essentially is a genie is freed by a player, and that genie feels overly bound to that player. He's like overly happy about everything. He tries to do everything to the best of his ability, but the problem is he overdoes it every time. You ask for seafood, he drops, the great octopus from the ocean in front of you. That would most likely cause a little bit of crushing. Or, you ask for gold, he goes and steals it from the Grand Caliph of whatever nation you're in, and it's all stamped gold that he brought you. So, I mean, and the adventure kind of goes with him trying to help the party, and just how that works. And it ultimately ends in one of 2 ways. Either it ends straight up, and you're done with it, you do whatever, because you go to the... I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's actually going to play this adventure, but to DMs, it can also really lead nicely into the City of Brass, which is an Efreet cities, which is also a really, really fun adventure. It seems very interesting. It's the longest one of the bunch. And then there's By the Numbers, which is the adventure number 2, which I personally think could be really fun, but there's one thing in there that I think could make it a little bit if used improperly, I think could really ruin a game in Al-Qadim, because it allows you to... There's a reward at the end of the adventure where you get to know where all of the Nexus portals to the elemental planes for each genie type, fire, earth, wind, and water, which is really cool if you really, really want to be dealing with genies as a DM. But if you just kind of want genies every now and then, I believe something like that could really, really mess up a game. So for that one, be very careful with the reward. I believe that used properly, it would be awesome, but improperly, you might as well just be done with the game. But the adventures I thought were really fun. It's really detailed on how things work. Like, they thought of a lot of things. Obviously, they couldn't think of everything, but they did think of a lot. I thought it was really interesting. It's got some cool artwork. I like this one. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I think it's a cool image. This genie popping out and scaring the crap out of some high-to-do merchant, probably. Moving on to map. The City of Brass, which now I know is the Efreet capital. And they went into a ton of detail on this map. I don't know how much y'all are actually going to be able to see of it, but they went into a ton of detail on this map. I was really happy with it. You really get to see what everything there is. So if you ever want to use it as a base, you could easily do that because they gave you plenty of information. Or in the event that you wanted to use it to inspire your own map making, you get a feel for how a good map's supposed to look. Then we move on to... not those. Those are next. We move on to these little cards that we saw earlier in the unboxing video. What's on the back of these is some of them are notable people. Like Captain Soot of the Ebony Queen. So it's a ship. And we get... which way is it supposed to sit? Yeah, like that. You get to see his ship and a floor plan for it. You get a lot of information like that. But then you also have encounters on here. And how they're supposed to work. And I believe one of these is actually a small side adventure that you can just kind of drop anywhere. And I like those. I enjoy small adventures I can just plop in the middle of, the adventure's going from point A to point B. Well, I want something in the middle. So I throw this little adventure in and there's a session. So I'm a big fan of that. And then we move on to the the monsters. These monsters are all pretty good. Some of these I'm really not a big fan of. This crystal scorpion thing. I think it's a little bit stupid, but they also got a lot of grue, which I'm not... they're just odd, misshapen things. Got that thing, that's pretty ugly. And then that thing, I don't even know what that is. It's ugly as... I don't even know what it's supposed to be. It's a wind terror. The Grue Illidris. The wind terror. Then they got something more common is the Azar. The fire dwarf thing. So, ultimately I was alright with these. They're monsters. There's a handful of them. They're pretty cool. I think it would have been better if I'd gotten more, but that's just because I like them. But that's the review. I personally would recommend this to a DM who really wanted to run with genies. But unless you really, really are interested in learning about genies or running genies or just you want everything in Al-Qadim, it's very specific. Now to players, I'd say avoid this thing completely. You have no business with it at all. It's not for players. It is solely for DM. There's no extra player information really. But I thought it was a pretty good product. So just be warned. Some of the things need a little bit of balancing if you want to use them long term. But that's it. So until next time, have a good one.